What's up, everybody? Well, this is the funny thing about doing research sometimes is right about the time you think you've got things pegged. I was just about to do a video about this ritual that took place in 1963, and I'm just about to put another nail in the coffin of the Church of Rome's legitimacy, and then I'm reminded of the miracle of the sun, also known as the miracle of Fatima, where, as the story goes, the Virgin Mary appeared to three shepherd children on the 13th of every month for 6 months, but only they could see her. Then she told them on the last month she would give a sign that everybody could see. Now, this was in 1917, and what a lot of people don't understand about the pre-internet world is nothing travels faster than the speed of gossip. So word got around, 70,000 people showed up and witnessed this event. There's quite a few photos of the crowd of witnesses, but camera technology wasn't quite there to capture what happened. There's a lot of images like this online. That's a real picture of the crowd, but they photoshopped in a swirl. But 70,000 people watched this happen, and we've got some really good written accounts of what they witnessed. Now, I've done videos on all different types of aerial phenomena, and that's kind of my knee-jerk reaction to this, but the difference here is an apparition told these children that this was going to happen, and it did on a specific day. So here's the way this all went down. Our Lady, meaning the Mother Mary, appeared to three shepherd children, Lucia, Jacinta, and Francisco, for the first time on May 13th, 1917. Every month on the 13th thereafter, she appeared to them and instructed them with messages to teach the world. You can tell these kids are stoked to be posing for the 500th picture of the day here. Over the series of 6 apparitions, Our Lady would give the children 3 secrets or visions known as the 3 secrets of Fatima. The first secret was a vision of hell with tormented souls in a sea of fire under the earth. The second secret was that Dub Dub 1 would end, but another great war would begin, and they note here that Dub Dub Deuce began in 1939, which is 22 years after this apparition, anyway, as well as a request for the people of Russia to convert to Catholics. Now, I'll just tell you as we go here, there's a lot of fishy stuff going on here, like the Lucia not being the same Lucia later in life. These secrets weren't even published till 1940. And she basically wrote a letter revealing the first 2 secrets to everybody, apparently. And then the third was supposed to be released in 1960, and it never has. So just keep your Sherlock Holmes hat and your waders on throughout this. But no matter how fishy things get here, remember that 70,000 people watched the sun freak out in the sky. So there's definitely something going on here. And I feel sorry for these kids here. You can tell they're hating life with all this photo stuff. But we'll talk some more about them in a bit. Now, here's the only actual photo I've seen of the sun on this day. And here's one of the first-hand accounts. This was a kid that just happened to live in the area, but people traveled from all around to come see this thing. I was only 9 years old at the time, and I went to the local village school. At about midday, we were surprised by the shouts and cries of some men and women. Outside, the people were shouting and weeping and pointing to the sun, ignoring the agitated questions of the schoolmistress. It was the great miracle, which one could see quite distinctly from the top of the hill where my village was situated. I feel incapable of describing what I saw and felt. I looked fixedly at the sun, which seemed pale and did not hurt the eyes. Looking like a ball of snow revolving on itself, it suddenly seemed to come down in a zigzag, menacing the earth. Terrified, I ran and hid myself among the people who were weeping and expecting the end of the world at any moment. Near us was an unbeliever who had spent the morning mocking at the simpletons who had gone off to Fatima just to see an ordinary girl. He now seemed to be paralyzed, his eyes fixed on the sun. Afterwards, he trembled from head to foot and, lifting up his arms, fell on his knees in the mud, crying out to Our Lady. During those long moments of the solar prodigy, objects around us turned all the colors of the rainbow. We saw ourselves blue, yellow, red, etc. After about 10 minutes, the sun, now dull and pallid, returned to its place. When the people realized that the danger was over, There was an explosion of joy, and everyone joined in thanksgiving and praise to Our Lady. So this guy says he was in his little village up on a hill, and he saw all these people from the city showing up, taking over the countryside. Then the sun just started freaking out and scaring everybody. And it sounds like he didn't know anything about the three shepherd kids at that time either. If you're like me and you think about things in scientific terms, and then if you can't explain it scientifically, then you might have something there. Fatima is located about 20 miles inland, and they say this was reported in about a 25-mile radius. Some mariners offshore saw it, and then various people at inland locations. But it was a relatively small area that witnessed this. It wasn't reported in newspapers all across Europe or anything. So if it was something local with the sun, if the sun itself was freaking out, it seems like everybody across Europe would see it, but that's not the case. All these people followed three little kids out to a specific area, and then this happened. This is an eyewitness account from Dr. Jose Maria de Almeida Garrett, professor at the Faculty of Sciences of Coimbra, Portugal. It must have been 1:30 p.m. when there arose at the exact spot where the children were a column of smoke, thin, fine, and bluish, which extended up to perhaps 2 meters above their heads and evaporated at that height. This phenomenon, perfectly visible to the naked eye, lasted for a few seconds. Not having noted how long it had lasted, I cannot say whether it was more or less than a minute. The smoke dissipated abruptly, and after some time, it came back to occur a second time, then a third. The sky, which had been overcast all day, suddenly cleared. The rain stopped, and it looked as if the sun were about to fill with light the countryside that the wintry morning had made so gloomy. I was looking at the spot of the apparitions in a serene, if cold, expectation of something happening, and with diminishing curiosity, because a long time had passed without anything to excite my attention. The sun, a few moments before, had broken through the thick layer of clouds which hid it and now shone clearly and intensely. Suddenly, I heard the uproar of thousands of voices, and I saw the whole multitude spread out in that vast space at my feet, turn their backs to that spot where, until then, all their expectations had been focused, and look at the sun on the other side. I turned around too, toward the point commanding their gaze, and I could see the sun, like a very clear disk, with its sharp edge, which gleamed without hurting the sight. It could not be confused with the sun seen through a fog. There was no fog at that moment, for it was neither veiled nor dim. At Fatima, it kept its light and heat and stood out clearly in the sky with a sharp edge like a large gaming table. The most astonishing thing was to be able to stare at the solar disk for a long time, brilliant with light and heat, without hurting the eyes or damaging the retina. During this time, the sun's disk did not remain immobile. It had a giddy motion, but not like the twinkling of a star in its brilliance, for it spun around upon itself in a mad whirl. During the solar phenomenon, which I have just described, there were also changes of color in the atmosphere. Looking at the sun, I noticed that everything was becoming darkened. I first looked at the nearest objects and then extended my glance further afield as far as the horizon. I saw everything had assumed an amethyst color. Objects around me, the sky and the atmosphere, were of the same color. Everything, both near and far, had changed, taking on the color of old yellow damask, whatever that is. People looked as if they were suffering from jaundice, and I recall a sensation of amusement at seeing them look so ugly and unattractive. My own hand was the same color. Then suddenly one heard a clamor, a cry of anguish breaking from all the people. The sun, whirling wildly, seemed all at once to loosen itself from the firmament and, blood red, advanced threateningly upon the earth as if to crush us with its huge and fiery weight. The sensation during those moments was truly terrible. All the phenomena which I have described were observed by me in a calm and serene state of mind without any emotional disturbance. It is for others to interpret and explain them. Finally, I must declare that never before or after October 13th, 1917, have I observed similar atmospheric or solar phenomena. Okay, so I've been thinking about this for about 3 days now, and I'm still not sure quite what to make of it. Now, I have no doubt that thousands of people witnessed the sun freaking out in the sky. And like I said, I've read to you guys many historical accounts of other strange atmospheric phenomena. But what makes this one such a brainbuster is 3 little kids said that they saw an apparition of the Virgin Mary. And I've heard stories about the other visits where they were in this trance-like state. You know, people are telling them, like people from the church are telling them, hey, if you're making this up, you're going to be in big trouble. I think I heard they even got jailed for a little while over this. But on the exact day they said that something miraculous was going to happen, it did. And it only happened in a very narrow area. A lot of people say that these were sweet, innocent little country children without an ounce of malice in them, and there's no way they could have made this up. And the fact that this actually happened kind of proves that they weren't just making things up here. So I'm just going to share some of my thoughts and questions about this. That doesn't mean that I'm saying anything definitively. And I know for some people, none of that'll matter. They can't understand the concept of a straw man argument. So people are going to hear what they want to hear, whatever. First off, about churchianity in general, I do not subscribe to this idea that you have to think about or you have to believe the specific little aspect about Jesus or the rapture is going to pass you by and you're going to hell. I think a large percentage of what I was taught about Christianity and what people believe about Christianity is another person's interpretation of the Bible and what happened. So before anybody starts casting fire and brimstone at me, I've read the text. I've heard how the preachers interpret this text. And I think churches have came up with all kinds of traditions that really had nothing to do with what Jesus actually taught. Now, from a Protestant perspective, it's strange to pray to the Mother Mary. She's actually hardly ever mentioned in Protestantism, but I think their main rosary prayer in Catholics is praying to the Mother Mary. But in this case, that is who showed up and talked to the children, allegedly. But here's the deal. This took place in 1917, and the 3 secrets that were supposed to be revealed to the children, Lucia in particular, I think the other 2 kids could see her, but Lucia was the only one that heard what she was saying. But the first 2 secrets wasn't released until 1941, 23 years later. So that's a lot of time in there for the Holy Fathers to make sure that she remembered things correctly, if you know what I'm saying. Portugal is a first world country. We're not talking about tribes folk here, and is about 80% Catholic. So I'm just thinking through the what ifs and what's possible here. But the Jesuits are the preeminent astrologers of our day. Even though they condemn anyone who practices such arts, it's pretty well known that they have one of the greatest astronomical libraries down in the basement. So is it possible that they knew this event was going to happen and they decided they would drum up a little faith in the non-believers and told these kids to prophesy this? Something similar has been done on multiple occasions with eclipses coming on. But the problem with that idea is we see eclipses all the time in different parts of the world, but we don't have any other accounts of the sun coming down and doing a little dance. So I might be able to put that in the realm of possibilities, but just not that probable. And then there's the possibility that it really was the Virgin Mary that came down and visited them. And, well, what else can I say about that? Another thought that I've had is, would any other spiritual entity, let's say there's some intelligence that we don't know about, would they claim to be the Mother Mary? Just thinking out loud here. Another thing is there's a political aspect to all of this. One writer says, it was a bad time for such an apparition and such a promise in Portugal. In 1908, King Carlos I and his heir, Prince Louis Felipe, had been assassinated and a republic established. The new government was adamantly anti-religious and anti-clerical and aimed at secularizing centuries-old Catholic Portugal. So a secular republic was being formed, and a miracle just happens to happen at that time. That certainly raises some eyebrows for me. Today, we don't think much about Portugal on the world stage, but around the time that Europeans started coming over to the Americas, the Treaty of Tordesillas basically divided up the New World between Spain and Portugal, both heavily Catholic countries. And on the catastrophism side of history, what, did everybody else's fleets get knocked out by tsunamis or something? How is it that these two countries are deciding how to divvy up the world? Anyway, it was a rather auspicious time for America and Portugal, politically speaking. Now, they didn't release what was supposedly said to the children until 1941, but then the second secret was that Russia would spread her errors across the world. Well, the Gray Revolutionaries didn't necessarily get along with the Catholics that well. So it is rather convenient that the Mother of God showed up and vouched for the political authority of the church at this time. The logical side of me is saying that the Holy Fathers had a little bit of influence on what little Lucia said she heard. But even with all of my skepticism and the political aspect of all of this, there's still no getting around the fact that they knew beforehand that this was going to happen, or they knew that something was going to happen, and that 70,000 people showed up and all witnessed it. Which leaves me right smack dab on the fence between miracle and elaborate scheme. Where on the elaborate scheme side of things, I have no idea how they could have possibly pulled this off. I kind of dig into mysterious happenings all of the time, and usually by the time I'm done with it, I've got a general idea of where I sit with things, but with this one, it's still just a mystery. I don't know what happened, but I know it happened in front of a lot of people. So I hope you guys enjoyed it. I'll catch you on the next one. Static out.